What's going on, guys, and welcome back to F122 for My Team Career Mode Season 1, round number 13, the Italian Grand Prix, Monza time, and yeah, let's see what we can do in the second Italian race of the season. Of course, we had Imola earlier in the season for Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. This time, though, it's the actual Italian Grand Prix at Monza. So we've got an aerodynamic upgrade that comes through. We're going to put another one on the car for later on. We've got to choose a new rival, and out of all these options, I'm going to go with Pierre Gasly because I don't think we have really any chance of beating the other two. It's even going to be difficult to beat Gasly, to be honest, but I think he's the best one to go for. R&D, there's going to be a change to aerodynamics and chassis, a reset to both of those for next season, so that could spice up the grid. And then at the top, well, in the whole kind of scheme of things here, Red Bull still right there with Ferrari at the top, still very close in the midfield, and yeah, we're kind of still at the back of the grid with Williams, but we are kind of getting towards the midfield. However, everybody's kind of improving at the same amount, so us and Williams are still very much so the backmarker team. Then you've got a massive midfield from kind of Mercedes, McLaren backwards, and then yeah, just Ferrari and Red Bull at the top. As for qualifying, it would be a completely full wet qualifying session. I think this is actually the first full wet session we've had in this game. We've had a few intermediate sessions, but this is the first time we've actually had the full wets on from what I can remember. And yeah, looking at the weather forecast, the race is pretty much going to be completely wet as well, maybe drying up right at the end of the race, but it's going to be a majoritively wet race. So this could be interesting. We seem to have a lot of wet races recently. I mean, the first half of the season we didn't have any wet races at all. In the second half we seem to, I mean, we had rain. We've got rain here. We had rain in Spa last time out. We had rain in Silverstone a couple of races before that. It's just been rain non-stop in this second half of the season. But to be honest, I mean, I've put a wet setup on the car. My setups aren't amazing. I'm just kind of going, I use a YouTuber called Sim Racing Setups, as we get it a bit wrong out of the final corner. I use Sim Racing Setups for all my setups, and then he had a video where he basically said this is how you convert a wet setup to dry. So that's what I'm doing. He is actually now going through and making specific wet setups, so I think I will try those once they come out for all the tracks. But yeah, we don't end up doing very well here. It's P22, dead last. We get beaten by our teammate in qualifying, so judging by that, I don't know what this race has got in store for us, but let's find out.
Welcome back to one of only two countries that has held a race every year since the very first Formula One World Championship in 1950. It is, of course, Italy, one of the great racing nations, and it's time to get underway for the Italian Grand Prix. With the rain coming down here at the 3.6-mile Monza circuit, the low drag setups preferred by most teams could cause them some problems in today's Grand Prix. So watch out for cars struggling for grip around the Curva Michele Alboreto. That's the Parabolica to you and me, the last and most demanding of this track's 11 corners. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. World champion Max Verstappen starts from pole position, edging out Sergio Perez, who lines up P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Hamilton, Mick Schumacher and Vettel, Bottas, Tsunoda, Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, Gasly, Stroll, Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso, Shaw, Russell. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Daniel Ricciardo and Guan Yu Zhou. They've taken a grid penalty. Magnussen, Albon, Liam Lawson. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. And Nicholas Latifi. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. And I'm joined once again by Anthony Davidson to bring you the lowdown for today's race. Let's have a chat about McLaren. What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
Alright, so It is, like I said, very wet as well in the race. Full wets at the start of this race. We are starting P15 thanks to a lot of drivers taking grid penalties. But, yeah, I'm a bit worried about our car. Just generally on this track, does not seem to have a lot of pace. And in the wet, we seem even worse. Despite having a wet setup, I don't know what we've got in store for us for today. But here we go to 5 red lights for the Italian Grand Prix in Season 1 of My Team Career Mode F1 22. Lights are out and away we go. It is a very slippery, slow start for us and it's not good at all. We get overtaken by Russell straight away. We now have Zhou Guanyu coming up the inside too. He's going to make a move on us. We then have Ricciardo trying to go around the left, but we're going to brake a little bit later as we have a big gap on the left and get alongside, I think that's Fernando Alonso, in through turn 1. But then we're just going to let him go because Zhou Guanyu was also there. We were 3 wide going through there and I thought that's going to be a disaster. We made a little bit of contact with Alonso but no damage for either of us, thankfully there. But we now have dropped back into the clutches of Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren as he's going for a move into the next chicane. We just outbrake him into this corner and get very, very close to the back of Latifi, who's had a great start here actually. He started in dead last and he's up to P17 at the start of this race, so very good start for him. Ricciardo though putting a lot of pressure on us. I mean, the McLaren is a lot quicker than us. We have a lot of quicker cars around us at the moment and that just makes it even worse because our car isn't very good here anyway, and the fact we've got quicker cars around us as well just makes it look even worse for us as Ricciardo gets past us with quite a lot of ease. And now we've got Albon and Magnussen battling behind. I'm hoping that maybe we can keep the Williams behind. I mean, the Williams seem to have pretty good straight line speed, which is a big thing on this track. And sure enough, Albon is going to go to the inside as we come into, I think this is Parabolica, isn't it, the final corner? I don't really know corner names, I'm sorry, but the final corner at Monza. But we managed to defend from him this time out, but I'm struggling so much, especially at this final corner. I just can't get the power down. And one thing I'm really noticing out of corners, I mean, this is after update 1.6 or whatever it was, 1.8, where they fixed the AI off the corners, but in the wet conditions I just don't have any pace off the corners. Max Verstappen started in pole position, but he did not have a good start as Sergio Perez manages to get up the inside of it, well, the outside of him, in through turn 1, turn 2, and Perez actually takes the lead of the Italian Grand Prix on the first lap here. You then have Lando Norris and I think Lewis Hamilton battling it out behind there. Norris though manages to stay in P3, but it is Perez in the Red Bull who leads the way on lap 1, but it's not going to take long for Verstappen to fight back on the end of lap 1. Round the final corner they go. Verstappen goes for a move up the inside of his teammate. It's a Red Bull battle here. This is, well, I mean, I don't know if it's really what Red Bull wants. They're of course clawing back some points on Ferrari after Ferrari having a pretty torrid time this second half of the season. Red Bull have come out of the blocks this second half and are doing a great job, and both their drivers are now fighting over P1, but Perez locks up a little bit into turn 1, has to concede the position to Verstappen who takes the lead, and now Norris has managed to get past Perez and he's up into P2, but Perez is going to follow him right behind him and he's actually going to have a little look, and that probably puts him slightly out, but he's now to the other side of Norris but can't quite make a move into the next corner. But Norris does lock up a little bit into the next chicane but still manages to defend the position from Perez. So Perez down from 1st to 3rd and now under pressure from Hamilton. As we continue on here, lap number 5, we've got some cars up ahead of us. Latifi is now the car ahead. He's doing a great job after starting P22, now in P18. He has been overtaken by Zhou Guanyu and a couple of others, but we're in a Williams sandwich at the moment, and honestly, I am really struggling for pace. I'm somewhat managing to keep up with the guys ahead, but then Zhou Guanyu has spun round in through turn 1 and we've all come to a complete halt. Latifi barely manages to not hit the Alfa Romeo, as then we come to a complete stop behind him, and then I think Albon and Lawson behind us also having to come to a stop. That was another moment from Zhou Guanyu as my teammate actually has a little look around the outside into the next chicane, but we're going to carry on. But here's a replay. Zhou Guanyu just comes around turn 1, puts a bit too much power on, and spins around. Pretty much exactly the same thing he did in Silverstone a couple of rounds ago, just slightly too much on the throttle there, spins it round. And yeah, we'll have a look from Latifi's point of view here. He just about manages to stop in time not to go into the side of Guan Yu. And yeah, we all just come to a stop there. That is a bit disappointing because we've now got a massive gap between us and the next group of cars, as we have now a battle between rookie and, well, yeah, mentor and apprentice, I guess, Mick Schumacher versus Sebastian Vettel. Schumacher going for a move in through turn 1, turn 2 on his mentor, and he gets the move done. I mean, the Haas is a decently better car than the Aston Martin, so you kind of expect that, but yeah, good move from Schumacher there. As now we have Carlos Sainz trying to make a move on Lewis Hamilton for what is this, like P4, I think, because he's actually lost a little bit of time to Perez and Norris up ahead, and Sainz manages to get the move done on.
It's probably about time we change tyres. It's a bit of a crossover period for sure, but the longer we stay, the worse it's going to get.
So that's just me there checking the with my engineer to see what we're doing with tyres here, because we get to lap number 8 and I'm thinking, he's saying we're kind of at the crossover point. We don't really know what the best option is here, but I'm going to come in, I'm going to take the risk, take the gamble, and we're going to go onto intermediate tyres because we are not scoring points in this race. We are really not doing that well, so I think we've just got to take gambles where we can just to see if we can salvage anything from this rather torrid race in all opinions. As we continue on here, and a couple of laps, intermediates weren't really working that well, but now they are starting to work. Most drivers have come in for the intermediates. Kevin Magnussen, though, ahead of us, who actually came in on lap 1 for some damage, is still on the wet tyres, though. He hasn't changed off those wets yet, and we have actually caught up to him considerably, but he would come in on that lap. Then a few laps later, Valtteri Bottas out of the session. He's parked up there on the left. That's a mechanical failure from him, so not a good weekend for Alfa Romeo as a whole here, it looks like, as we now have Charles Leclerc looking to make a move on Mick Schumacher. So Leclerc wanting to make his way up the order, started I think in P9 with his teammate in P10. Well, Sainz has managed to make a lot more inroads than his teammate has. Leclerc not doing great in this second half of the season. So he's now trying to get past Mick Schumacher, the kind of junior Ferrari driver, I guess you could say. He's somewhat perhaps in the fray for getting that Ferrari seat at some point in the future if either Sainz or Leclerc don't perform. But Leclerc manages to get past Schumacher this time around and is up another position. We're now messing around with our telemetry, with our setup here, putting a little bit less front wing on the car because I knew it was drying out. And then lap number 19, right towards the end of the lap, DRS is now enabled, and that's pretty much the point at which, right, it's now time for dry tires. Sorry. So we're going to go on to softs because we've only got it's technically 8 laps to go here because we're starting at lap 20. So the softs should just about make it to the end of the race. I don't think tyre wear here is terrible. Because I'm the first one into the pits onto dry tyres, I kind of just had to take a gamble. Do I go mediums or do I risk the softs? So I thought I'm just gonna risk the softs. As you can see though, it is still a little bit wet. The track doesn't look completely dry, and there are a few drops on my visor here. And you'll also notice we go in a few laps later here, and still the only other person that's come into the pits for the dry tyres is my teammate Liam Lawson, and he's in dead last. Sonoda has also DNF'd out of the session, so there's now only 20 runners. Lawson's in P20, we are in P19. We've given up a few positions. I think we were in like P15 before coming into the pits to come onto the dry tyres, because I thought it was time, and I think it is time for the dries. But it's not massively time, because here we can see Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton now battling it out for, this is actually for the final podium position right now for P3, which Lando Norris currently holds onto. He hasn't had a podium so far this season. He'd love to get one, but lap number 26, it is definitely dry now, But to be honest, the intermediate runners actually aren't going that slow. I am catching them somewhat, but I'm not catching them anywhere near as quickly as I thought I would be. And yeah, they don't seem to be wanting to come in for dry tyres. They're just all going to stick it out on the inters for the end of the race. So that's making me think maybe we've made a mistake here. Verstappen wins the Italian Grand Prix. Perez comes home P2 for another Red Bull 1-2. After crossing the finish line, he crashes into his teammate. So that's a bit weird. We saw this actually in Imola, the last Italian race, with Carlos Sainz crashing into his teammate. This time it's the Red Bulls crashing into each other. We come around the final corner. We're actually going to lap our teammate. I don't know what has gone on for Liam Lawson this race, but he has had a terrible race. We're going to lap him, and so that means he's been lapped by every single driver, because he is going to finish in P20, the last place finishing position, and we're going to finish P19. It's the two bottom positions for Mazda Racing. It has been a terrible race weekend. We could have been P15 if we didn't come in, as there's a massive car park now at the end of the race, with all that went on with the two Red Bulls. We could have been P15 if we didn't come into the pits, but I just had to
Here we are then, a thoroughly deserved win in Italy after another excellent Grand Prix. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
Well, they certainly stood out as a driver with tons of confidence on the track. I think their ability to keep their cool, even during some of the more hectic parts of the race, meant they were able to capitalise on the mistakes of other drivers, giving them the opportunity to make their way to the top spot with ease.
Here come today's winners. The team at Red Bull have done a phenomenal job recently, and it's clear to see that they've put in the work, and they should be so proud of the victory they secured here.
So Max Verstappen wins again. It's 2 on the bounce for him in Italy. It's then another second place for Red Bull with Sergio Perez. So it's a back-to-back 1-2 for Red Bull. They are turning this championship around in this second half, and Carlos Sainz comes home P3. He manages to get past Norris and Hamilton, just generally being quicker than them in that Ferrari, but it's still a poor race for Ferrari in their home Grand Prix, and it's another 1-2 for Red Bull. They are bringing this championship back. There's only, 3 rounds left after this: Japan, Brazil and Abu Dhabi, but Ferrari could still bring this back. For us, like I said, it was not a good race. P19 in the end for us. I think we would have been like P15, P16 maybe if we didn't come in for the softs, but I had to say the Granville, and I mean we weren't getting points anyway, so it was still worth the risk. Championship doesn't change a whole lot, although Verstappen now catching up to the two Ferraris at the front, and yeah, constructors still not really changing either. And although Red Bull are catching up to Ferrari in the constructors, Ferrari still have a pretty decent lead in that championship. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.